Two WWE stars are gone from the company. Why it's a very tricky situation. Tony Khan clarifies the status of one of his wrestlers. Also, WWE is now seeking indie talent back into the company. Guys, we're going to talk about it all in this video. Timestamps in the description down below. Triple H is back in NXT. Wrestling Observer newsletter has reported that WWE has contacted a number of independent wrestlers to see if they are interested in attending the next set of tryouts. Meltzer wrote, while the idea is still to recruit good-looking college kids or athletes and train them to be wrestlers, they have contacted some indie talent for tryouts in Nashville over SummerSlam week. Now, for those who watch my videos and you hear my analysis on AEW's bloated roster, it stems from WWE. This was an issue I had very, very big issue with when WWE was doing it from 2019 to 2021. They brought in so many indie wrestlers. The roster got bloated. NXT got bloated. Not everybody was used. Then WWE transitioned to NXT 2.0, and you started to see more and more talent get released. So the idea that WWE is going to bring in independent wrestlers, I don't have an issue with this. In fact, I think it's a good thing. It's probably going to be better for WWE in the long haul. However, we need to see WWE go back to its roots. NXT 2.0 is the closest thing to the original NXT, from like 2012, 2013, 2014, where they took guys, I think Kevin Owens was a great example. Kevin Owens was Kevin Steen on the indies. He was a notable name in the indies, came into WWE and transformed into the WWE system. Now he's having big moments on WWE television. They need to keep doing that. I think we have seen some of these new people from the NXT 2.0 era where like they haven't been used on TV and they're getting released. And the idea of that was because they were not getting up to speed on how to be a pro wrestler. So, here's the thing. If WWE is smart, you're going to bring in some indie talent as well into the mix. There's got to be a mixture of both because you're going to waste money, talent, resources, value, all this stuff just on people who have no experience and probably have no interest in getting experience. However, on the flip side of that, if you're WWE, you do not want to be recruiting talent that are indie wrestlers, and then you get too excited and start bringing in more and more indie wrestlers, because then you're falling back into the same pattern as 2019, 2020, 2021, where you have such a crowded roster, nobody's really getting an opportunity. This is actually one of the biggest reasons why I said Kushida didn't work out in WWE. It was just wrong timing. If Kushida was in WWE NXT 2014, 2015, 2016, it would have been a completely different story for Kushida. I imagine his career would have panned out differently. But we saw Kushida join the Black and Gold brand when it was incredibly crowded. Then he didn't really transition well into NXT 2.0. I put the blame on WWE for that. But also at the same time, too, I just imagine timing is everything in this world. So with WWE, I think you need to have the best of both worlds. You need to bring in those college athletes. You need to bring in some of those celebrities. Valerie Loretta from Bellator is a recent signing. Logan Paul is a recent signing. But also at the same time, too, you should be bringing in some indie talent or some talent from AEW if they're no longer with the company. Now, with that being said, I also want to be perfectly clear when I say this. This is not an excuse to go and get trigger finger and just, get super happy and just start signing everybody. They cannot do that. They need to avoid this mistake. AEW, in my opinion, has made this mistake. WWE made this mistake years ago. And I think it's really important that you try to keep that roster as thin as possible while still building the future of your company. And with Triple H back in charge, I think this is a possibility. Tony Khan has clarified the status of Penelope Ford. Guys, a lot of people were thinking Penelope Ford was out of the company. Tony Khan responded to this on Twitter, and he says, basically, Ford is injured. Penelope Ford is injured. Total opposite. In fact, she's a great wrestler, and I can't wait until she's medically cleared to come back. She's been in some classic AEW matches, and hopefully she'll be in many more. So keep in mind, Penelope Ford has not been seen on TV wrestling in matches. A lot of people were thinking that Tony Khan and AEW have given up on quite a few women talent, especially when you look at the Bunny and Penelope Ford and Anna Jay. They were all pretty much involved in some big stuff. And then, of course, Layla Hirsch is also injured. Red Velvet is also injured. So this women's roster is actually a lot thinner than people realize because of injuries. However, Tony Khan is confirming that Penelope Ford is still with the company. I don't have a problem with that. I think Penelope Ford, I go back to that tag team match. I think it was on Rampage. Just absolutely crazy. Ty Conti, Anna Jay, and really just want to point out with the Bunny and Ford, if they ever do decide to do an AEW women's tag team title belt, I'm not saying they are, but if they ever do decide to do it, they have a tag team there. So I think AEW will keep her. I don't see there an issue there, but Tony Khan is not getting specific about the injury other than the fact that she is injured. All right, guys, WWE has reportedly let go 2 WWE producers, 2 WWE stars. Arya Daivari and Curtis Axel appear to no longer be in the company. And this is absolutely incredibly interesting to me for one really big reason. So Curtis Axel and Arya Daivari were kind of like in a tryout phase with WWE as producers. They've been used quite a bit recently. However, the company has recently instituted budget cuts. So specifically, Curtis Axel and Arya Daivari are no longer being brought in. This doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for them to come back, but they were basically under a probationary basis with the company, so therefore WWE made those immediate cuts. Now keep in mind, while Arya Daivari was on a probationary basis with WWE, he was also wrestling on AEW Dark, which made this all too interesting for me as a wrestling fan. I don't recall the last time WWE has done that in recent memory that I can at least think of. So WWE was having him come in and produce matches while at the same time he was wrestling for AEW Dark. Now, Curtis Axel and Arya Daivari were said to be pretty damn good at their job too. This was, of course, internet talk and stuff. But, I think this is a tricky situation, man. Budget cuts, budget cuts, budget cuts. We constantly hear about budget cuts. But WWE is making so much money, and that's really my big issue with all of this. Anytime somebody is let go from the company, it's always due to budget cuts. I can't remember the last time I heard of a reason somebody getting let go of WWE for anything other than budget cuts. Arya Daivari, relatively young. Curtis Axel, still relatively young. These guys can always come back to WWE if they choose so. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening in WWE right now. It's a very, very chaotic backstage atmosphere from what's being said online. However, with Stephanie and Triple H leading the talent meeting, it sounds like a lot of people are a little bit more excited. So it's like this weird time in WWE. Obviously, there's the investigation with Vince McMahon and whatnot. I think once we get an idea of who's really going to hold down the fort for the company going forward, then we'll really start to understand some of these decisions and why they're being made. But as of right now, anything that is still being said as, budget cuts, I don't know. It sounds weird to me. It's not something that I necessarily enjoy hearing because this company is making so much money. And it's not like these guys are on-air talent where they're wrestling all the time. They are producers. They are producing matches. And I know before, whenever they were announced as some of the producers for some good matches, those matches were pretty well received. So it's a very interesting situation, but we'll see what happens next.